up uh,
What happened to the mayor?
He heard it was being recorded, so he took off.
Boy, I guess he's not on here anywhere. There
Here
he
he
is.
comes.
all right, here we go. Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. So we call the meeting in order. Jenny, if you could take the roll call.
Councilmember Thorson,
Here.
Councilmember Peterson,
Here.
Councilmember Walzak,
Here.
Councilmember Sonic,
Here.
Mayor Furlong.
Here, quorum is present. So tonight we're going to be talking about budget. And there is no end time here, but we'll try to keep it to as short as possible. Not as short as possible, but keep it on track, Scott, and we'll go from there. So I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mayor, Council. But what I'm going to do is we've provided a lot of information. Jason, our finance director, again, has spent a lot of time and work. We've gone over several times, added a lot more information than what we've had at previous meetings. I'm just going to turn it over to Jason to allow him to present that, and we can spend, as the mayor mentioned, as much time as needed to talk about things tonight so that everybody has a good understanding what the options are. And even though there's three options that we've put together for you to consider, there's also anything in between, above or below that too. So with that, I'll turn it over to our finance director, Jason Zimmerman.
Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Scott, Mayor, Council. Yeah, so this evening, we've got some scenarios played out. We did get tax capacity information from Ramsey County, so we were able to do some modeling there as well. As the city manager indicated, really these are just hypothetical and ideas that we threw down on paper. It's not an indication that any specific option needs to be selected, but any combination of actions that council sees fit can be done, but just trying to put some of the information into the context. So with that, I think what I'll do is I'll present, or I'll show my screen. I'll kind of walk through things, and then Mayor, I know that's kind of difficult for you to moderate as we go, but I'll try and pause in between for questions if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, great. So all right, hopefully everybody can see my screen here. So so essentially what I tried to do in the memo format is put revenue changes, expenditure changes, and then the new additional items that we discussed. So let me minimize this, bear with me just a second here so I can see.
So Jason, I don't see everybody, so if you do have a question, just go ahead and just jump in and ask the question for Jason. Okay,
thank you, Mayor. Yep, thank you. So I tried to break it down, but essentially this is the same information that we've been operating off of. So this gets us to a $559,000 roughly levy gap without adjusting the levy year to year. One note, it's slightly smaller than what we discussed before, but there's about $50,000 of contingency that we removed from this. And there will be a requirement to transfer into a new fund potentially at the end of the year or into next year. So, but those costs theoretically wouldn't roll over year to year. So rather than increasing the levy to account for it, doing a one-time transfer, we think will account for that action. So I'm going to scroll down quickly. The other thing is as well to the general fund or the general levy. we'll have to have some discussion or some guidance around what's done with the HRA and EDA, and I've got some information on that as well. But we'll also need to have some conversation about how we move forward with those two components. So, so what I tried to do here, break out again, is put our total levy information at the top. We can see that 10.2% change year over year, the potential need without any actions. Again, our revenues, expenditures, and then I listed out each one of our pieces of debt that are outstanding currently for the payable, or that we'd need to collect taxes for next year. So that's that $5,992 amount that we've discussed. So just again, graphically laying it out a little bit different. And then moving on. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so hopefully everybody can see this. So received property tax, or the tax capacity information from Ramsey County. So I tried to throw together 3 different scenarios. So the first of which, and I'm going to get into some more information here because I think there's some obvious questions, and it'll have to do with fiscal disparities, which isn't the easiest concept, but I'm hopeful I can help council understand what's going on. But essentially in this model, you know, the median home is going to increase by 7.2% market value. Even if the city keeps the levy the same, no levy increase, the tax capacity rate will go down by 5.48%, down to 38.46. But the median home's going to end up paying $20.91 more with a flat levy. And I'll hit on that in a minute, but what I'm thinking is I'm going to go through these hopefully relatively quickly, and then we can have conversation, and I can go up and down through the slides if everyone's okay with that. The next item, or the next scenario we played out, was a 2.5% levy increase. So again, same situation, market value goes up to $229,000 in this column. The tax rate declines by 2.19%. down to about 39.8%. And the median home then is going to end up paying about $49.36 more per year. And the final scenario we played out is to keep the tax capacity rate flat. So I'll highlight it right in here is where we're looking. So essentially the rate would stay the same. So any changes to what an individual city portion of taxes paid would be directly linked to the change in assessed value. So it would result in a 4.16 levy increase, or 4.16% levy increase, or a $228,493 increase. So again, the change is only by change in assessed value. So again, keeping that capacity rate flat. So in the other 2 scenarios we saw, the rate was actually decreasing. And this takes out account the market value referendum we have. It's a very small decline. It's only, like here you can see, 9 cents. So just ignoring that for this model. So again, third one, the market, or the tax capacity rate, stays flat, generates an extra $228,000, or 4.16% to the levy, and then results in a $68.26 increase to the median market value residential property. And so I just real quickly want to go through, and we can go back through this, but the question why, and I'm going to go back up real quick, is I'm sure everyone's wondering, how could the tax rate go down, the levy stay the same, and the median market value home pay more, right? And so what happens in the background is fiscal disparities. So I think it's post-market value growth, commercial and industrial, post-1971. 40% of that goes into a pool and is reallocated. And I've got a model here that I can kind of run out that shows, it's the HRA-EDA. Oh, that's the, sorry, I apologize. The other one I had did not get on here. I'm going to open up another file here. I apologize. I don't know how that scenario got missed. So bear with me a moment. I apologize that I have one for the HRE EDA, but also one for the general levy, and that didn't get included. Yeah, so here, and again, I apologize, this isn't a presentation format. I'm gonna hide that. And so what's essentially happened is the fiscal disparities distribution to the city's declining. So it's a composition, like I said, that commercial industrial tax base goes into a hopper essentially, and then is reallocated. And part of that, there's two factors of the contribution. Part of it is your tax capacity relative to the rest of the 7-county metro. And then also it's a computation of your prior year tax rate. So without getting into it too much, essentially our tax capacity is increasing faster than the rest of the 7-county metro. And last year we experienced a pretty significant tax rate reduction. So if you remember, we went from a 43.363% to a 40.689. So what I'm projecting is about $107,000 decrease in fiscal disparities distribution to us. So what happens is when we tell the county we need $5 million, they net out the fiscal disparities distribution to the city. So in last year, we would have gotten $1.22 million. This year we're projecting 1.44 or 1114. So a decrease of 100,000, which essentially means then that's shifted to the taxpayers. So, where we would have had, I guess, 3.88 million taxpayers would have paid, now though 3.9 million taxpayers are going to pay. So even though the levy's not changing, there's a change in the fiscal disparities distribution to the city, which then is shifting an increase to the property tax owners in North St. Paul. So it's a little bit of a tricky topic, but to boil it down to the most essential pieces, tax capacity rate increases, tax rate is reduced, so the distribution goes down. So just to understand that at a really high level, I think is, oh, here it is. I'm sorry. It is in here. I skipped over that slide. I apologize. So here it is just in presentation, but you'll notice that the pay 2020 amount and the pay 2021 is different. So that's kind of going on behind the scenes. So again, just an important concept I think that council at a high level understands, because it is a cost shift to the residents that pay taxes. So I know it's a complicated thing, but so with that, that's at a high level. If we want to get into some of these potential items, we can. I don't know, maybe if I want to, I'll stop presenting for a second here, Mayor, and if there's any questions or if we want to dig into some of the line items, we can, or have some conversation.
Any questions for Jason?
So basically, maybe another way of explaining that is that, that idea that, if our city tax capacity rate is at 40.689%, and we've established a budget of, let's just say $6 million, because the market rates have increased such, if we do nothing to our budget, it doesn't change at all. We're going to see increased revenues because of that increase. And so that in turn will allow, if we're just saying, well, we want to collect the same amount of tax revenue as we did last year, because our budget isn't changing at all, our tax capacity rate decreases to accomplish that. That kind of essentially.
Yeah, Council Member Thorson.
I understand this is really complex stuff going on here, but essentially that's what's going on. That's why if we were to say zero levy, we'd see the taxpayers would see a 5.48% reduction in the tax capacity rate. But with all other things being equal, there's even in that scenario, there's a small $21 increase in their taxes because of these other drivers.
Yeah, Councilmember Thorson. So I think the takeaway is really, and just to make sure we're on the same page, is that the overall capacity in North St. Paul is rising faster than the rest of the 7-county metro. And then when you compile that with the fiscal or the tax capacity rate reduction from the prior year, where it was 43.363 to 40.689, it then basically says, okay, if you keep the levy the same, your taxpayers need to come up with $107,416 more. And that's why we're seeing that essentially.
What was our final levy? What was the adopted levy? Was it like 8? What was that percentage? What was that we had approved?
I think it was 5,491,000.
And what was that levy percentage that got approved? Was it like, I can't remember what it was. Was it like 5?
It was five, correct. Yep.
Okay,
Correct.
5. So even though we raised the tax levy 5%, we still saw a reduction from 43 down to 40. And those are what those scenarios laid out here as well. There's the 0% in scenario A, the 2.5 in scenario B, and then keeping it just locked in at 40.68, and the terminology you're using is keeping the levy flat. And that's equivalent to a 4.16% increase.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Councilmember Thorson. Yeah, it's really not in an effort to confuse things more than they need to be. I think it's just good information, hopefully to
Sure.
to show the council, right, that you say, right, if you don't increase the levy, I think people say, well, why am I paying more in taxes? And I think that not many people understand that fiscal disparities portion. So just to have a concept of that. So if you have to engage in conversation, that you have that information to share with taxpayers.
Jason, is there a lot of cities that use that tax capacity rate and keep it the same, or does it fluctuate, year by year? I know we've always been pretty consistent with ours, but now it is changing quite a bit, and it's changing what the budget looks like. So is that the reason why a lot of cities will go to that flat rate?
Yeah, Mayor, I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag. I think in a lot of growing cities, they try and keep the rate flat because essentially when there's new development, they're sweeping those taxes generated and adding services. It's a little bit more problematic as a fully grown community. You think about what would happen, and I don't have that chart, but the decline in the economy and median property values were, $136,000, 7-8 years ago compared to $229,000 now. That's a real significant change. So if the commitment's to keep the rate the same, it could have some drastic impacts on level of service, if there's a big economic crisis. But some cities try and stay close to a number. It's just a little bit of a mixed bag.
And keeping that number the same, again, that would adjust then based on the county assessor's market value, what they set. So if the values go up, yeah, you're going to pay more. If the value stays the same or goes down, that would be adjusted accordingly.
And we're not going to be the highest market value city, every year in the next, whatever, how many years, I'm assuming.
Well, I think the Mayor, the tough part with that is we can't influence or dictate the assessment process. That's done by Ramsey County. So, if they say, a house 1 year is worth X and then it's worth Y, the city, council and staff doesn't have the ability to influence those assessed changes.
And I think that's why some of the cities may, try to maintain that flat rate with that, because then it adjusts with the market values instead of doing a flat, levy increase or something different.
Well, and then I know this might be jumping back ahead, but just to kind of stay at this high level theme that we've been talking about in all these scenarios, there's a fairly significant gap that needs to be made up. And yes, there's obviously options to consider, but I think in any scenario, we're still looking at the need to make some significant cuts to our budget.
Yeah, and I think, council, for what it's worth, in any of those three scenarios, if that's the question, I think in any of these three scenarios, the staffing adjustments that we had identified, the dollar amount, I think it was $400 and some thousand. I don't have it in front of me. But I think in any of these three scenarios, that would still be consistent, and those adjustments would still need to happen. In no matter what of these. So that, I guess, don't take away that, if we, one or the other, that's going to change, because I guess I'm looking at, in any of those three scenarios, that reduction would still have to take place.
Can you say that again, Scott? I'm not sure I followed that.
I'm just saying, in any of these three scenarios that have been laid out, I think that workforce reduction at $430,000, that would still happen, because in some of these, we've got the allocations to make sure that we don't take away from our street maintenance and some of those things that they suffer, so that we're able to maintain the things or continue with the things that are doing with all the development that going on, so that we don't let those projects fall on their face and continue to support those. So, unless council directs differently, I see that workforce reduction happening in any one of those three scenarios.
Are you saying you're saying 430,000 in any one of the scenarios?
Yes.
So that's not what's in the options in the different scenarios, though.
Well, I think that the dollar amount that's in there would be to refund or to make sure that we're funding those street maintenance categories and things.
So, okay, so I'm sorry, I guess I'm not following. This is not what's in the packet. So option 1 on scenario A is a workforce reduction.
Correct.
Option 2 does not have any workforce reduction. Option 3 has a smaller workforce reduction. In scenario B, option A has a workforce reduction for the entire gap. Option 2 does not have a workforce reduction, and option 3 has a smaller workforce reduction. And are you saying that no matter what, it's going to be 430,000?
Well, to make sure that we can continue to fund those street maintenance activities, and council wants to make adjustments to not do that, and to make adjustments to that workforce adjustment, and not fund the street maintenance work with as much funds.
So you're saying there are a lot fewer options that you're willing to look at than what is in the packet?
Well, I'm willing to look at all those if the council is comfortable with that, but I'm very strong on not wanting to lose where we're headed with the street maintenance work, and our maintenance and overlays are something that we're going to need to do, in my opinion, much more of that, because we're going to have, I think, a scaling back of the larger street projects with the bonding and the cost associated with those, and the ability to do more of that maintenance and overlay work is going to be a requirement. And I don't want to cut ourselves short with that. Staffing is very, very important. Don't get me wrong with that. But I guess the direction that council wants to go and being able to maintain the funding for those projects.
Sorry, is it basically, Scott, would you say that the reallocating the LGA from street maintenance, so that $174,000 line item that is used in several of the scenarios and the options, for you, is that the key item that you do not want to see you don't want to see that moved?
That's correct.
And are there any others that relate to the street maintenance, or is it just that $174,000?
I think it's just that 174, Jason. That's the one that covers our maintenance, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yes. So yes, that would be the line item.
Okay, so I guess that tells us where the city manager is. We've reduced some of the options.
Well, that's why I asked that question, is because, in looking at these, this gap this gap can change if we do say, well, let's, instead of reallocating some LGA, let's go back to scenario one, option one, you know. Instead of reallocating the LGA to asset preservation, we could say, you know, let's swap that out for reallocation to the street maintenance fund, 174, and then that might reduce that workforce reduction by, you know, a couple, 10,000, whatever. But that's still a pretty significant gap in where we need to come up with. And from my understanding was the plan has always been in these dedicated or these highlighted staff positions that Scott has evaluated and said, yeah, we can operate without these without seeing a significant reduction in services. And so when I'm looking at these options, I see that as a theme. It's in, you know, option 1 and 2 in scenario A, it's in option 1 in scenario 2, and it's also in option 1 in scenario 3. But I'm interpreting that if council isn't comfortable with that, here's some other options to reallocate some funding to avoid those cuts. That's not something that I would entertain. I would be supportive of what, you know, the city manager has highlighted in these, you know, workforce reductions in option 1 and 2 in scenario A. But, you know, I just want to make that point clear moving forward, that because going over this too, I see where Councilmember Sonic's coming from. If you continue to scroll down and you look at each, and again, I understand I'm jumping ahead here, but we've all had time to review this over the weekend, I would assume. So this isn't new to anyone. But, you know, you're looking at these budgets from each department and there is no employee personnel changes. So I guess that's kind of where I'm confused, is that if we're going to make these changes regardless or not, why are they still included in these proposed figures in the far right column for projected 2021? I'm not seeing those changes in there.
There's been no changes. There's been no changes made at this point. There's just been this dollar amount that's been identified as 430,000.
Okay.
Yes.
So is that a safe assumption to say that after tonight's meeting, that's the main goal, to say for you to move forward with the next future discussions, is you want some sort of consensus from the council on, because this is a major decision here, right?
Yes,
Do we
absolutely.
move forward with these projected staff reductions, or are we saying, no, let's make up for it through various other reallocation mechanisms like the street maintenance and the asset preservation?
Yes, that's exactly
Okay.
what we're,
All
because this is not something that's taken lightly, believe me.
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure that we're all clear on that, and that's hopefully the outcome of this meeting, that moving forward, we're not at our next budget meeting with similar figures to say, well, we're looking for council, because that's been the question at the last 2 meetings. What's the council direction? And I get that now we've got these scenarios, so hopefully tonight we can get that. So I'll just mute myself and we can move forward with the presentation.
Yeah, Councilmember Thorson, thank you for kind of highlighting that. I think that the real goal here, at least for me, you know, we're looking within a month, we've got to hold a meeting to set that preliminary levy. And so I guess kind of first to get a comfort level about what a potential increase would look like is probably the first goal. And then the follow up about what actions council would like to take to get there. And in fairness, the scenarios that were put in front of you are from me. You know, I was trying to just come up with all different kinds of scenarios to resolve the gap, to give council as many options as possible. Again, there's probably other services that could be reduced or things that could be changed, but just trying to provide as many options as possible.
So do you think, Jason, that we're kind of looking at the not just the numbers, but you know, coming up with those numbers? Should we just be more focused on, you know, the levy itself and what that should be? You know, if it's 2.5 or 0 or whatever, and then staff would be able to go back into come up with some sort of plan from there.
Yeah, Mayor, I think what I've tried to do is to provide a model of what is an acceptable levy change in combination with actions to be taken to support it. And I think it's hard because you can't just say, well, we want to do scenario B and then choose one of the options, because council may not be satisfied with the outcomes of those options to resolve the gap. So it's difficult. I don't know, for me to say exactly how to move forward, but I think in combination to say, hey, if we take these personnel actions, but on the median home, the increase is going to be $50, as a council member, I'm okay with that. Then I think that finding that balance is important, but I don't know that they're mutually exclusive.
And the unknown with this is it doesn't appear that this is a short-term, Band-Aid, because we don't know what 22 is going to bring. There's also some indication of that, depending on the path that this goes. Where do we end up with fiscal disparities moving ahead for 22? Where does local government aid end up with that whole scenario? It's the unknown of how long a term effect of this is going to be and what our future holds with this.
And I think that's kind of what we've been hearing the last couple of meetings is the fiscal disparity, the LGA funding, our bond rating. What is it going to look like, in the next year or 2 years? I don't think we know 100% where we're going to be. So, doing a 0%, to me, between 0 and 2.5%, I would be happy with.
And I think that's, again, I want to stress as much as I absolutely can. This issue with doing adjustments with staffing is a hard thing to consider about doing, but it's also something that I think I'm just really concerned with, that it's adjustments we're going to have to make to be able to be sustainable for the year or years to come, and also being able to do the things that we need to do in our community to continue to support the redevelopment and infrastructure, things like that.
And I was going to say, I think Councilmember Sonic brought up, we've got about 320 families coming into our town here in the next year or so. So, the needs are going to be much greater than what they were previous years, like you say, with development. And we're going to have, Public Works is going to probably need more service from there. And yeah, medical, police, everything. So I think there is going to be a need here in the next couple of years. Councilmember Sonic.
Yeah, I would also like to talk about what is it that our customers value? What do the residents value? Is the number one thing to have a 0% levy increase? Because I think there are some people who complain about the taxes, but there are also people who complain about the lack of service, the lack of potholes being filled, the lack of code enforcement, the lack of police presence, on and on and on and on, right? And I don't know if Brian Frandl's here. I think usually the electric department knows how many households we have in the city. It's like 3,500 households or something like that.
Correct.
Anybody know? Yeah. And now we're adding.
Brian's on. Go ahead, Brian.
Hi, Tom. So yeah, we have a total of 6,500 meters.
6,500 meters. Okay.
Yeah, correct. And then probably close to, if I had to guess, close to 5,700 of those are probably residential. I can give you, tomorrow I'll give you a little better idea, but that's.
So there's probably about 5,700 residential units in North St. Paul alone, but some of those are in the city of Maplewood as well, possibly Oakdale.
And Oakdale, correct.
Yeah. So I don't know how many residential units there are in North St. Paul, but we're adding 329 in about a 1 year time. So our need for service is increasing, and we have people complaining about the level of service now. And what we're talking about is significantly reducing the level of service. So I think that's something that we have to consider beyond just percentage of levy increase. Because when you look at what we're talking about, and granted, Jason, I wonder if you could help me with this. You know, as you said, the median value home, even if we had a 0% levy increase, we'll still see a $21 increase in their city taxes, right? Is it also true that a 0% levy increase does not impact all homeowners the same way, so that some may have a tax increase and some may have a tax decrease?
Yeah, Councilmember Sonic, I think, yeah, generally the changes in market value, I guess in general, is a higher impact to what taxes are paid than anything else.
So is it true that if we had a 0% levy, some people could see a more significant tax increase?
That's correct.
Okay. And if you had a 2.5 or a 4.16% increase, some residents could see a tax decrease?
That's correct.
Right. So for me, it seems it's sort of a tricky game when you get into this. You know, if we want to be able to advertise to residents that we didn't raise taxes, you have to be careful about who you're talking to, because some will feel like, well, yeah, you did. And not to mention that the city taxes are only a fraction of the overall taxes that a resident pays, because you got the school district and the county as well. So with a 0% increase, the median value home is going to pay $1.75 more per month. With a 2.5% increase, they would pay $4.12 more per month. And if we kept that tax rate flat, they would pay $5.69 a month, which is only $4 more per month than if we had a 0% levy increase. The other thing that I'm concerned about, so the point I'm trying to make is that the numbers on an individual residential basis are really all over the place. And if you want to try and advertise to people that, hey, we kept the taxes flat, again, that's going to have a different impact depending on who you're talking to, and they're going to feel that differently. I think what we should really think about more is, what is the impact of the city services on the residents, and what are they getting for the money? As I said, I think we've heard from a lot of residents. I know code enforcement has been a big one. Streets and streets, and not just full reconstruction, but I mean potholes, taking care of small problems throughout the city. Those things have been big issues. But we need to look at that very closely, because especially when it comes to the number of staff that we have, especially those in City Hall, that are taking care of a lot of different issues for the city. And when we look at those job descriptions and the responsibilities of all those roles, that's a lot of stuff that they're taking care of. And if all those things go away, everything slows down. I mean, all those things will slow down in other areas. So the level of service goes down. The level of need goes up, because we're increasing residents, we're increasing households. And if you feel good about the benefit of reducing the levy this year, you're going to feel worse when you have to increase the levy in subsequent years if you try and put any of that money back. So if you take away a person, as hard as that is, it almost seems easier than trying to add one back. Because now you're going to have to, if you add one back, you're going to have about a 2% levy increase just for that one person. And then if you have COLA and other increases, you add that on top. So everything is tough. So, and is same thing, you know, Scott Dudek, to your point about the street maintenance fund, I also would not want to take money out of the street maintenance fund, not only because of the streets and taking care of the streets, but if you take that money out and you want to put it back in next year, that's $174,000 you got to add. And if you take the money out of the asset fund and then you want to add it back next year because it still matters, Now you have to raise the levy that much the next year. So I just think we have to be really careful about every one of these cuts that we're looking at, because there are a lot of things at play here, and our residents value more, I think, than just a 0% levy increase.
And there's, to your point, Tom, too, also, with the housing that we've got coming on and the services, I mean, police and fire, I can tell you right now, from the fire front, I know if trend continues, we're going to be at over 1,500 calls this year for the fire department. That translates into the police department, other calls within the police department also. But this will be another new record, and we're far from having those 300 new residents online that will continue to drive that. So not just that one place, but services across the board will increase.
Councilmember Thorson.
So just kind of commenting on some of the comments that Councilmember Sonic, hit. Just taking some notes here. I agree, maybe focusing on a levy percentage isn't the most productive approach, but that's what we were asked as a council. What are you comfortable with as a levy? And so, again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, considering all the economic circumstances that have taken place here with the Ramsey County's market value increase, it has hit North St. Paul disproportionately than the rest of the county, probably one of the highest in the states, I would imagine, if we had that information compared. You take a look at the economic impacts of this pandemic, the fact that we have, recently just increased our levy last year 5%, it was 8% the year before. This is not normal operations here. This is a time where, people are losing their jobs, people are taking pay cuts. We can't just continue to operate like we have. This isn't status quo. If we did just do nothing, we'd be looking at a 10.4% increase, right? And I don't think anyone's comfortable with that. Maybe some people are, and that's just, we can make the argument, sure, well, we want to maintain our level of services, so that's what we're doing here. I don't necessarily agree with just the assumption that these changes in personnel are going to automatically equate to a loss in services. From my understanding, these positions that have been discussed, 4 out of the 5 are administrative, and so they're not necessarily the ones doing the work here. We're not talking about eliminating patrol officers. We're not talking about eliminating public works employees. They're administrative positions that certainly some of these tasks that they currently do are going to get spread out over others, but they have been, as Scott mentioned before, this isn't taken lightheartedly. There's been thought put into this. Some of these positions I know have been discussed in years past. So this isn't something that I view as just, well, we want a 0% levy and we're going to accomplish that by just randomly selecting these positions we're going to cut, because that gets us to that goal. What I'm trying to look at here is, no matter how you slice it, we're looking at some significant shortfalls here, and we're not going to make that up by cutting $3,000 out of everyone's office supplies budget. And so at some point, we have to have these difficult discussions of, sure, it's nice to have these multiple levels of administrative positions, and it might make the person ahead of them their job easier because they can delegate some of that work that they normally would take on. But we're a small city. We have limited resources, and we're not in that position anymore where we can say comfortably, well, tough. We just have to bite the bullet and raise taxes 8 to 10% every year to maintain this level of service that we've become accustomed to. I don't know. I just think that we're at this point now, and again, looking forward to, we're talking about 2022, 2023. If we want to continue to maintain these high level of services, i.e. the people actually out there patching the potholes and patrol officers on the streets, we would need to be looking at these positions again 2 years, 3 years from now. We'd be having this discussion again. And this idea that it's too hard to eliminate a position than to create one. I think we're seeing the complete opposite is true. These positions were at one point not existed in our budget. They were described as a need. They were created, and now it's extremely hard to eliminate it, right? So, I mean, I respect Councilmember Sonic's view and opinion and how he articulated his points, but I'm just saying, I'm looking at this from a much different perspective, and I'm understanding of city manager's evaluation of identifying these positions and the need to move forward without them. And, you know, if we somehow see some drastic reduction in services because of it, then I guess we'll have learned that, well, we made a mistake and we need to bring that position back. And to do so, we'll have to raise the levy to do that, unless we can highlight other areas that could be reduced. So.
Councilmember Sonic.
Yeah, a question for City Manager Dudek. The roles that you've considered eliminating, do you feel that these are all administrative positions that don't impact the residents? And would we be able to easily eliminate those roles without losing any level of service?
They're all obviously going to have some impact on the residents because we've had positions and all of them, I mean, they're not 100% identified to this point, but no matter what position we eliminate is going to have some impact on service. That goes without question, because otherwise we would have been, without saying that, and I'm not saying that just to say it, but these are positions that were any position within the city. Otherwise we'd be saying we're just paying somebody to be here occupying time. They're providing a service to our residents. And so no matter what position is going to be eliminated, there's going to be some change in service.
Well, because otherwise I would have questioned why you hadn't eliminated those positions a long time ago.
Correct.
Right? Okay, thanks.
Okay. Jason, I don't know if you want to move on with your, you want to go through the other slides at all, or?
Yeah, Mayor, I'm not sure, you know, again, what I tried to do, and just to provide some context around this, I'll launch my screen back up, but a lot of this is just supporting information. So again, you know, try to put this fiscal disparities calculation in front of you to provide some information about that, about why, you know, there's more to a change in property taxes than just the levy. But another item for discussion is going to be the HRA EDA levies. I'll touch on that in a moment. And again, the fiscal disparities about that. But we're also trying to continue to move forward. And as we look at, you know, the implementation of OpenGov and what that's going to look like, we want to put some more context around our budget about what goes on here, what we do, what we're trying to achieve, different, you know, impact measures, positions, expenses by function, budget highlights. So in the packet, and we've got this prepared for pretty much every department and fund that the city has. But basically a package like this, every department has about 2 pages, consistent formatting. But again, I think it'll be a real value and help consistently year to year, you know, show what we do, what we're operate, how we operate, what each department does. So I don't know that necessarily getting into the line by line with that will provide any additional benefit, but and again, the changes that have been discussed this evening are not incorporated. It's based off the budget as it was presented with that $559,000 gap. But so just hopefully council can look through that. I know I've gotten some feedback already, so I appreciate council members looking through that and providing some input. But if you'd like, I can move on to the HRA EDA levy and have some more conversation around that, or I'm not sure if council members have a direction they'd like to head.
No, why don't you go ahead and mention those scenarios.
Sure. So the HRA EDA levies, and again, this isn't a all or nothing necessarily, but again, I tried to prepare an analysis here. So this is showing a $0 change to the HRA and EDA levies results in a $1 increase to the median home. Again, that fiscal disparities conversation holds true again here, where you know, no levy impact or no change to the levy, property taxes will be impacted by that distribution of fiscal disparities. And then in the second scenario, there's a $36,202 increase, which is the maximum statutory amount allowed. And that then results in this $1.67 increase to property tax, the median home. So I'm not sure if council wants to have a discussion about the direction. Again, it's not an all or nothing. I just wanted to show a 0 increase and then the max allowed increase.
Yeah, I'll just provide my quick comment on that. I think we have to have a full picture of this, and that would be the fund balance, the current fund balance of both the HRA and the EDA, because I think that kind of dictates, why are we raising the taxes? Why do we have a levy for this at all? It's because we want to accomplish certain sets of goals, and in the HRA, we've got the student built housing program, and we've kind of discussed, what should be an appropriate amount of land held for future projects, and this home repair, what's the name of it, with a home rehab program. There's been discussion on what's an appropriate level if we even continue to do that. So I think we need to, have that part of the equation here before we discuss whether or not what we should be doing. I mean, my opinion on the HRA is that, it would make sense to have, we obviously have a current project, and then we have one on deck. And then maybe if an opportunity comes up to have one, in the hole, is baseball talk here, on deck in the hole, so 2 years out, that would probably help with our planning, because that would allow us to share with the 916 program, hey, look, here's the lot size, and here's what we're looking at for a budget for the next year's home, and then 2 years down the road, here's the lot size, what we're kind of looking at for the budget. The way how the housing market currently is, I don't think we're going to have any problem selling the one that we're currently working on. It's just a questionable when's it going to get done, and how quickly can we get it up on the market. And then at that point, that fund will increase by however much that sells by. And my opinion last year, and I think I still feel the same way, is I don't really see the need to continue to levy in the HRA, because I think that's at a sufficient level to kind of self-sustain itself with those points I just covered. And the EDA has always done the max levy, and they've spent every penny of it essentially, because it used to supplement a full-time staff position and others, and that, I think the EDA can come forward with a recommendation on, we would like to build a balance to this level some point to accomplish these goals. And so an EDA max levy to me makes more sense, because we have really nothing there to work with in the scheme of economic development and purchasing potential properties. There's just nothing there.
Any other comment? Councilmember Sonic.
Yeah, I like that thinking of Councilmember Thorson, and I wonder, can the HRA be self-sustaining at this point?
Well, go ahead, I'll turn it over to Finance Director, but one of the comments would be, we're doing the home loans. We've done those for the last several years. There's continued interest on those rehab, emergency loans, and things that we're doing. So that's one place where that levy dollars would go, aside from our student built housing, because we're putting out dollars, $10,000, $15,000 in loans, and that's one place, for example, with that. So if we want to discontinue that, that would be a question to talk about.
And those loans are recycled though, right? So as they're paying back, couldn't we just have I don't know if being in the loan business is the right place for us anyway, but I just wonder if we have, we have some small amount of loans that we cycle through, and
Correct.
People who get those, and as they pay back, then there's more available for other people or something like that. What limit would we try and get to with the value of our loan bank?
Right now, I think the interest rates on those loans are 3 or 3.5% is what's on.
No, I just mean what's the the pot that we want to get to with the total value of loans available to residents. So say if we had $50,000 available to residents for small loans, for small home improvements, and we just kept 50,000 and we just kept cycling through that, and it might grow 2 or 3% as people are paying those things back. But we never go really, we only grow that by the interest that we make on those same loans, on that same
I
capital.
think a lot of cities have that. You know, they just
Yeah.
have a pot, and once you get done,
Right,
you're done.
rather than continuing to add to it.
Correct.
And I
Well,
agree
well-
with Member Sonic's assessment that, you know, it's concerning to be essentially getting into the banking industry here. And, you know, certainly it's nice to offer that to residents who may not be able to qualify for whatever reasons. And we're kind of that last lifeline as an extra option. But I agree, we shouldn't just have an open-ended, well, we could give, you know, $10,000 loans out one year and then another $10,000 the next year. And now all of a sudden, yeah, that HRA budget can get chewed up greatly just with that alone. But I think we need to, as a council, say, what are we comfortable with? What do we currently have? And do we expand from that, or do we just lock it in and say, well, that's that? And I think if we do that, you know, looking at, again, the fund balance and you know, we're, in my opinion, it could easily be self-sufficient as it is right now. That's why I would be against continuing doing the levy, unless we had some specific reason to say, we need this extra. What does the max levy bring in? Like 140,000 around there?
Yeah, Councilmember Thorson, I think it's about $170,000.
And yeah, what does that equate to the homeowner? On that slide, it was, we do the max, it was, you know, $1, whatever it is, $1.67. Okay. Well, again, you could say, well, yeah, it's just $1.67, but I like to circle back to say, well, why are we asking every household for $1.67? Is it just to build up this fund balance? Because, you know, we might have all sorts of plans or whatever, or let's have a plan. Let's put some thought into it and let's stick to it and then see where we're at. Because if we don't need to ask $1.67 from everyone, we shouldn't be, right? And I think that kind of speaks to a lot of these funds. I was, you know, when I was reviewing this, I was going back to the quarterly financial reports that we had with numbers through June, and kind of scrolling down and looking at, you know, fund balances. I'm sure that'll be our next budget discussion. We're going to look at enterprise funds, fund balances, and then rates and fees. But I think you can make that same discussion with the HRA that I've been saying with a lot of these funds, particularly the asset preservation, street maintenance, street improvement, park fund, you know, all these things. I think it would really help us moving forward to have a plan and not just say, well, of course we have needs for it and we're going to allocate funds, but we should know, like, you know, in the street improvement revolving fund, the balance set in June was a little over $1 million. The street maintenance fund was $2.2 million. You know, is everyone comfortable with just saying, well, yeah, that's for one-time street improvement things like a maintenance overlay project, but should we be kind of laying out a plan for that? I mean, that could kind of supplement with the capital improvement plan. You know, residents ask, when's my street going to get done? And we go and look at the color code and say, well, it's between, you know, 2025 and 2035. Well, that doesn't really help, but maybe it's, well, you're in a street that's farther out, but you might be on the schedule for a maintenance overlay, and that is going to happen in 2 years, and that's going to cost this. So we can kind of have a refined kind of approach to all this stuff rather than just, well, we're going to allocate 174,000 into the street maintenance fund and we're going to continue to do that. You know, we're going to continue to levy $140,000 every year for the HRA because we know that we can spend that money. Let's have a budget and a plan, and so we can actually come back and share this information with the people paying for it.
Councilmember Walzak.
My question goes back to the HRA and this loaning out of money. it seems like, and I could be mistaken, but that I'm recalling that aren't there some circumstances where these loans are forgiven? And so we don't always get everything back that we put out with interest, or is that, am I just off base and thinking of something else? It seemed like there was something in there about there were times when there would be loans forgiven.
There is a small emergency fund loan that we have out there. Those are rarely taken advantage of. For the most part, the loans that we're doing are the home fix-up fund loans that are at that 3 or 3.5% interest rate that are, $10,000, $15,000 loans. That's what's being utilized out there for the most part. We do have on occasion, somebody will have an emergency loan for a sanitary sewer if they, can utilize it for that or something. But for the most part, the vast majority is all the home fix-up funds.
I think we did use it quite a bit during the recession. I think there was some pretty major loans that were taken out during that time. Go ahead, Councilmember Walzak.
Well, so it would just seem that if you're in a position that some of these are forgiven, then your pot doesn't get back to
Correct.
full to recycle out more loans, and so does that need to be taken out of the picture for this to work with setting it where we're at? If we think that what's in there is enough, or
I think that would be the policy that you'd have to set, is to say we're going to allocate X dollars for emergency loans that may not be paid back, and X dollars if you want to continue the program at all for revolving loans for the home fix-up fund.
In my business, it's called shrinkage. The stuff that's just kind of gone and you don't see it. Go ahead, Councilmember Walzak.
so what are our numbers as far as how many of these loans have gone out in the last year, and
I
Well,
don't have.
I was asking Jan, I think before we can go any further with, an HRA levy, these are the sorts of questions we should have clear answers for. So you asked a great question. We're told that there's emergency loans that potentially couldn't get paid back. Naturally, my question would be, well, how many of those have we ever issued? And if it's zero, then why do we even offer it if no one's utilizing it? Should we continue to hold that as part of the budget if no one's ever applied for it and used it? To me, it seems pretty obvious, but, maybe it's because people aren't aware of it, or, there just hasn't been circumstances that have needed it. And maybe in the past when it got started, there were, and things are obviously different now than they were 10, 20 years ago. But that's what I'm asking. Let's get that full picture. What are we engaged in currently? What's our fund balance? Let's see the statistics on how many emergency home loans have we given? What's the current amount of defer, or what is just a home remodel? Is that what it's called? I'm on the website right now. It just says housing program, single family home loans, deferred loans, multifamily property loans, avoiding foreclosure, and then energy efficient remodeling, but most of them have links to Ramsey County. So I don't think that's anything.
And again, I think we've talked about this, Scott, before. It's about communication, advertisement. People aren't aware of it, and once you start advertising it, once you start, then it becomes more available to people. I agree with you. It's just one of those things that if you do have it and you start advertising it, people are going to probably use it more than what they have.
Well, or you could say, how long have we had it and no one's utilized it? At what point do you say, okay, probably something we shouldn't be involved with if there's no interest?
I can tell you that, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can tell you that the dollar amount that we allocated for home loans has been utilized this year to its full extent.
Councilmember Peterson.
No, has anybody ever defaulted or they've always paid him back? I mean, the home improvement, not the emergency ones.
We've never had a default.
Okay.
And
Councilmember
what's that total amount that's been fully utilized this year?
I don't have the budget. It's around, I want to say it's something short of 100,000. I don't know, maybe it's like $75,000. I can't remember the budget amount. We can pull all that information together and give you statistics on loans, what they've been issued for, dollar amounts. But I do know that we're at the budget max for this year.
Councilmember Sonic, did you want to chime in or no?
Nope.
Okay. So go ahead, Jason. Why don't you?
Yeah, Mayor, I just wanted to touch on real quick. So that right now the HRA has about $140,000 and the EDA has about $258,000. So from today, as of today, those are the cash balances in those two funds. So just
And again, I think those, the HRA fund, didn't we buy a property? So that did have a lot of money in it, and then we bought the property. So these things come up, unexpected too. So
Yeah, I was just going to say that the HRA has usually been the fund that's been used for these property acquisitions or holdings on those in the past, and that's why the dollar amount's been more. And you can see where our fund balance is now. So as we're finishing a house that will be sold, we also will very likely be in a position where we're going to be starting another house with outlays going on there before the income is coming back from the one that's sold. But that's just how it happens.
right.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you said that the current HRA balance, cash balance, was 148,000.
it's about yeah, I think it's 140,000.
Okay, but then there's also the land available for resale, which part of that would be this current home or building. I thought
Right.
it was way higher than that.
Yeah, Councilmember Thorson,
I thought at one point we had like $600,000 in cash and then another roughly 400,000 in land or construction in progress. So I thought it was close to $1 million.
yeah, Councilmember Thorson.
I was saying in my opinion, that we were self-sufficient, but if that's not the case, then that's why I'd like to have this discussion when we actually have all the fund balances and the whole detail of it, not just it'll only increase $1.62. Let's do it.
So
Director, go ahead. Jason, go ahead.
yeah, no, just the distinction again between fund balance and cash. Again, governmental accounting, you cannot have funds with, theoretically, you can't have funds with negative cash. So even if you have a fund that has a lot of assets, at the end of the day, if you have negative cash, you basically have to take from another fund to fill that gap. So it becomes a little precarious, especially in a situation like this where the HRA does own land. And if you remember the resolution that council approved earlier in the year, we had that land held for resale fund that had a negative cash position because of land that it owned. That was a transfer that was done earlier in the year as well. So the HRA acquired some land under market value cost, but that's what drove that number down as well. So just to put some information behind that number.
Yep.
Councilmember Walzak.
Another question I guess I have, Scott, is about how much money is our share to invest in each of these new homes that the school builds for us? Is there kind of an average of what we have to invest in this home before it can be finished and put on the market to sell, and how much is that?
Well, we fund completely everything. The school doesn't fund anything. So
So we would need to have then where we've got 140 in cash, that we would need to have enough money on hand to build a home.
yeah, if that 140,000 is all we had and we didn't have a house coming for resale coming up here, we would not have enough money in the fund to build this new house.
So it takes what, maybe a couple $100,000 to build a house?
Oh, easily. You know, we've got $75,000 that we just purchased in the lot. And then we've got the, you know, have the demo cost and the redevelopment. So we will easily have that. You're looking at, you know, potentially $175 a square foot to build a house today.
Okay, so Jason, now I'm talking to you. So are you saying that the land, it counts, but it doesn't count?
Yeah.
Sort of?
Yeah, Councilmember Walzak. Yeah,
the cash money, I mean, it's there and it counts, but it doesn't help us when it comes time to pay for these things that we need to build a house.
yeah, Councilmember Walzak, if you remember back, we had this conversation about the land held for resale fund that we had, and I think city manager, I think that goes back before the HRA. We were using that fund to do some land acquisitions. And in the situation there, and it kept coming up in the audit, every year we got an audit comment about it because the fund had, the land values were $700,000, but it was in the hole, a negative cash position by like $563,000. So they said, yeah, you have more assets, you know, you have this asset, but you have no cash to support the asset, right? So we continue to get a comment every year in the book, right? So we put together a resolution, move some properties around at under market value cost in an effort to get that fund back to zero, get the land out, so we would stop getting those comments. But yeah, so on a balance sheet, it looks good, but from a government finance perspective, at the end of the day, they look at that cash line and basically say, you can't be negative, and if you are, you're going to get a comment about it.
So for continuing this HRA discussion, can we maybe at the next budget meeting have what the current cash balance is, what the current land that we hold, and I understand there's differences in governmental accounting, but what the value of the current land that we have, that if we were to sell today, we would have, right? Do you follow me? So like this lot that we just bought on 19th, what did we pay? 75,000. So in theory, we could throw a for sale sign up there and someone could pay 80,000 for it, right? The house that we're building now up on the hill that was moved, I mean, I would imagine that's gonna get appraised at over 200,000.
Yeah,
Maybe even close to 3, who knows? Seems like, but you know, so that will be an influx of cash. Yes, I agree, Councilmember Walzak, we have to account for the current project in the budget. Have we had a home budget to look at and approve on any of these homes? No, that's what I'm asking. We should have something, because then we can justify having a levy, right? Because I mean, right now it's just, well, we don't know, and yeah, it could be this, but you know, maybe every house we built has been way too big, and we shouldn't be doing that. And I don't know. That's questions that can be easily answered if we can have a budget, right, and some sort of plan. Versus, you know, in comments in the past, you know, there was a belief that we should have, you know, like this HRA should act as like a land holding company, and we should be very aggressive and just snatch up every piece of land of it we can have and have 6, 7, 8 properties on hand. Okay, sure, we could. Should we? I don't think so. So that's all I don't think we can have a discussion until we have the full picture here, and it seems like we're missing some pieces.
What would you like to see on the EDA budget then? Also, if that one has a cash balance, I think Finance Director said of
Yeah.
258.
I think that's a lot simpler. It's just we need money to do stuff, right? And they've got 128 in there now, you said, and that's a product of
258.
258.
258, okay. And we haven't been allocating, you know, 80, 90,000 of employee salary out of that account any longer, correct?
Correct.
And that's been about 2 full years. So that's where that money is. So I think, you know, the EDA should come forward with a plan to say, hey, if we can get to this level, these are the things we'd like to do. But that's a lot simpler conversation, right? They have nothing, they've never had any money to deal with, like in the HRA's got assets to work with.
Councilmember
But, yeah,
Walzak, go
take
ahead.
that and too.
Councilmember
Well,
Walzak.
but the HRA has used their money over and over. I guess I'd like to see if we're looking for a complete budget for the HRA. We've kind of, unless you are sitting on the EDA, the rest of the council has kind of been in the background of that. And so I think a budget for the EDA to say, you know, you're talking about, oh, we could do stuff. Well, that needs to be maybe clarified for the council too, if, you know, what that stuff is, because, you know, I'm not sure. Sometimes the EDA has gone about things that have come through the council for approval, but sometimes they've done some stuff that hasn't necessarily come through the council for approval, and we end up learning about it after the fact. And you know, it would be nice to be a little more up to date on what is going on and what stuff is, you know, or even just what their plan is. But
EDA, those advisory, anything they do, council votes on, right? Just like anything we do in the HRA, we go into the HRA meeting and then we vote on it. The EDA doesn't just spend money. They make a recommendation to the council to do stuff, and then they do it that way. So I don't know what particular things you're saying they've done without council approval, but
just a couple of
the EDA budget was always laid out that we would approve. We'd say, hey, here's the EDA budget. We're going to levy the max, pull in 128,000, and then, you know, in the past, 80% of that's been taken up by staff costs. The former, what was that position? Community Development Director, EDA Director. So there's never been money in the EDA to do it. The EDA does have the ability to bond on its own, but that also would be approved by the council. They wouldn't just do it. But I think the conversations at the EDA level, Jan, have been potential redevelopment projects. So there would be an easy way for them to just list out, here's one, here's another, here's another. This is what we anticipate the cost to be. But that's going to be 700,000 over $1 million real easy. And we're nowhere near that. So that's what I'm saying. The EDA essentially can levy the maximum levy for 5 years, and they're still not in a position to do anything with that money in terms of real estate development. Because there's a limitation
Jason?
what they can do with that money. We can only levy to the max levy 128,000 a year, right? Or whatever it is, 130, whatever. That doesn't go very far when you're talking about commercial real estate.
Jason?
Yeah, Mayor, the distinction, HRA, EDA, right? The EDA is made up of the mayor and a council member and 5 other individuals appointed by the mayor with consent by the council. If you look at our financial statements, it does a good job of describing it on the bottom of page 33, but it does say the city council may impose its will as it decides, essentially. So it's a little different than the HRA, where the council is the HRA board, where the EDA is comprised, right, of the mayor and a council member. But yeah, the council can impose its will. So
well, and we just had at our last meeting the bylaws, and we went over that, and I believe the chair even stated the EDA is more of an advisory role where they don't make decisions like that. It's always run through the council, right?
Yep.
What decision has the EDA ever made on its own without council consideration? I'm not aware of any.
There is none.
There is none, yeah. So
Okay. Jason, you want to keep moving on, or are we done at presenting, or?
yeah, Mayor, I can certainly bring the information back up, but I think for all intents and purposes, unless the council has specific questions about line items or things to go through, I think that, staff's essentially looking for some direction about, an appropriate, again, that combination of an appropriate levy and what actions to be taken to support that levy and get the budget resolved. So, again, in the agenda, and I know we have council meetings, or the potential we've been meeting weekly, but again, we're required to have that preliminary levy by the end of September and certify that information to Ramsey County. So by the current schedule, that would leave us September 15th as our second meeting, that third Tuesday. So that's, as of now, I think, unless we want to change that date.
No, I think we can leave that, September 15th, because we got 2 meetings before that. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, I just want.
We could always meet on the 22nd if we have to, because we're meeting every Tuesday.
Go ahead.
Right. I just want to say, right, that just in an effort to, ensure that we bring forward a good, complete package that has all of the facts and information, and, similar to what was done last year, that, time is somewhat of the essence here. I don't want to, have the council make a decision that they're not prepared to make this evening. But really, I think by next Tuesday, if tonight we're not in a position to have some idea of the direction to go, by next Tuesday we would need something, just because the amount of effort that is required to put a good package together, at least from my viewpoint.
Correct.
Councilmember Sonic.
Well, look, we can say right now that on September 15th, we will say that our levy will not be more than 4.16%, right? I mean, all of these options are lower than what the Minnesota state average has been for the last 3 years. The last 3 years, cities in Minnesota have averaged 5.8% levy increases. So even at 4.16, that would be a decrease from the average and be a decrease from what we did last year. So, and even at 4.16 increase, we still have a $331,000 gap to make up. So there's still hard decisions that would have to be made. So it's going to be hard decisions no matter what. So it's how hard beyond 4.16 if we do that. So I mean, as far as getting it, because I think we have a lot of time here yet to figure out the details. It's having that initial levy in by the end of September. That's easy, I think, because if we could say 5% right now. I think everyone agreeing that it won't be 5%, knowing that it will be less than 5%. Just to get us over that initial hump.
Well, and I agree. I mean, but I'm hearing on both sides. I'm hearing 0 and I'm hearing up to, the 5 or 4.1. If it's a compromise, but go 2.5 or 3, if we set it at that. But again, we're close. So I think between now and our next meeting, let's, if you got any questions for Jason or Scott, talk to him about, where we should, especially if you got any questions from this meeting at the next meeting, we could hopefully set it at the next meeting is kind of what I'm saying.
Well, I'll just go ahead and, because I have a firm grasp of what's going on here, and my opinion hasn't changed. I respect what's been said, but I still think our goal should be 0%.
Okay.
I understand we couldn't set it at, we could set it at 10.2, right? And just say that's what we're going to set it at. We can't go above that, but we can go below, knowing very well we're not gonna go with 10.2. So, to me, the goal should be 0. That's what we should strive for. And, why even, go that route? So that's my opinion.
Andy, any,
I'm with Scott. I think that 0%, that's what I'm hoping for.
Jan?
I think that's just where we need to really, really strive for. This year is unusual, and I think exceptions need to be considered, and I think we owe it to our residents to try to stay on that 0. if we can, to help them out. Do we even know how many of our employees are still, or our city residents are still unemployed? We don't have a real grasp on how many of our residents are even working yet. So I think we need to strive to keep it just as absolutely low as possible with that 0. If there's any way to make it work, we need to strive for that.
Well, and I guess my comment is if that's the direction that we're looking at, I want to know that as early as possible, because we've got some significant work to do to get to that and need to get started with that immediately. I don't want to do this at last minute. And if that's the direction that we're hearing from council, if that's a consensus, that's what we need to know.
I think myself would be, 3%. We set it at the 3%, and then we have some room to go down. So that's where I'm at.
All right, well, I know we can't officially vote,
Yeah.
but I took a tally here and we got 3 at 0, 1 at 3%, and 1 at 4.16.
No.
So
Again, we can't vote. So
I understand that, but we were asked what the consensus was, and each council member just stated what they wanted. So I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I think just the follow-up then is if that's the direction that we'll head, between now and next week, hopefully, and I don't know what next to bring forward or what council would request of me, but just that consideration that those actions identify, potential actions, what will they be to solve that gap? And so I'm not sure if there's something else that council would like me to prepare, or what I can do to help council make that decision.
Councilmember Sonic.
Jason, there was some information that you had put together in the past, and I wonder if you could also include that, like, so if we were to do a 0% this year, what might that looking ahead look like for the following year? Of course, I don't have to care. I won't be here. I'll just leave nasty messages on your Facebook page when the taxes go up. But no, it'd just be interesting to see. So if all things remain equal, and so if we were to eliminate the asset allocation fund next year, and we want to bring that back, if we want to eliminate contracted mowing next year, and then we want to bring that back, if anything that we eliminate next year that we would want to bring back the following year, along with any other increases that would already be on the table, what might that look like for 2022?
Yeah, I can kind of pull back one of those scenarios because essentially it's along the lines of what was already prepared, so I can try and do something. And I think that the big thing is that, and through conversations, that the personnel piece is really what's going to be difficult over the next several years. That the wage grid system that was implemented, the vast majority of employees were at step 1, and it's a 6-step grid. And to get to the end of this, it's going to get to 2024 to 2025. So we're going to continue to see, potentially several $100,000, per year increases in personnel, which is, 4.5 or 5% every year just in personnel. There is some light at the end of the tunnel, through some of our, debt levies coming due, but, does the council want to stop doing projects then to supplement, the cost of paying personnel? And I think that's a question that council's going to have to ask, or internally ask themselves and respond in the next 5 years about how to balance, the debt levy falling, but, the desire for infrastructure improvements and the continued cost. And again, right, if LGA continues to go the mode that we've looked, it's the $10 per person in the population is what it can decrease, $121,000 per year. And so there's a real risk, and even beyond that, right? We know the cities or the state's using all of its essential, reserves and its savings to balance their budget, given the revenue shortfalls they've had. So there's some real threat and risk to LGA in general. So it's hard when there's a lot of items up in the air like this to try and prepare a scenario, but I certainly can try.
Given, I think what you had shown before was given all things were equal, if we had a 0% increase, was it like 9% right out of the gate for 2022 or something like that?
Yeah, Councilmember Sonic, I think it depends, right? And
Right.
depending on the actions taken with personnel, there's potential for a couple $100,000 there. I think it's about $90,000 for the city's portion of the debt related to the new TIF district down on 7th and Margaret. And then, like I said, a potential of $121,000 risk with LGA. So that gets you pretty close to that number, off right out of the bat.
Another thing I just wanted to mention, not to be I told you so, but on the whole TIF district thing that we did, I mean, this is the cost of progress for us. I mean, we knew going into the TIF districts that we were going to have all this development and we'd get all these new buildings and these new businesses and everything like that. But what the effect would be is that it would raise taxes on all of the existing taxpayers because we're not going to get any benefit from those new buildings for 20 years. So the fact is we're going to have to, as a city, float those new residents for 20 years, or just keep reducing. They're going to need services as well, and so we're just going to have to reduce services overall, or we're going to have to help float those people until we start collecting those taxes into the general fund.
Certainly one way of looking at it, I would argue these proposed staffing changes were increasing our efficiency, and again, I can't stress enough. I know it may be because my delivery lacks. I'm just not a articulate, well-spoken person like yourself, Councilmember Sonic, and that's why I wish you would continue to run again, and because I think you really do bring a lot to the table, and you help my line of thinking, and I think you also stimulate others. But just being blunt, I think these positions have been looked upon as nice to have and not needed. And during these types of times, how can we justify just assuming, well, every year we're going to have a 5, 6, 7% increase when we're not at that point yet, in my opinion, where we can say, look, our budget that we have now is as streamlined and as it possibly can be, because you can ask anyone, how'd you like to have an assistant? Of course, they're going to say yes. And we can justify those positions every year. Every department, I'm sure, would love to have additional staffing, more workers at the core, more administrative help, everything across the board. But we have a very restrained, limited tax base. Have to operate, and I think this is a step towards that. And so I guess my parting question is, I mean, the last 2 budget meetings, we've been asked as a council for direction, right? The first council meeting, we were asked, what's the direction on the levy? The second meeting we just had on the 18th, we were asked, what's the direction for the levy? Tonight, we've been asked that same question again. What's the direction for the levy? To me, it's pretty obvious, but if we walk into, are we planning on having a budget meeting on September 1st workshop? Is that the goal? Or do we have? My concern is the next budget meeting we're going to have the same conversation again. What's the direction you want to take? And another week has gone by, so what is staff looking for the council? Do you want an individual email explaining this is the levy I'm comfortable with and these are the cuts I think you need to propose, or what? I mean, what is it? Because I'm getting the feeling that we're moving into the next budget meeting is we're going to have some more slides, but it's going to be asking, here's what a 0 looks like, here's what a 3% looks like, here's what a 4.1% looks like. And I don't know how much longer we can do that, assuming also we need to have discussion on enterprise funds and fund balances and rates and fees, right?
I thought we're done, right? I mean, I thought you had consensus.
Right?
Um,
The message
okay.
that I've heard
I
that
think-
we're at a 0% from three of you.
And again, getting up to this point, we did have, there's a lot of moving parts right now. And Jason is just getting all that information, in the last week or so, so coming up to this meeting, this was an important meeting tonight.
Yep.
A lot of
I want to
information.
be crystal clear, that's all.
Yeah, Councilmember Thorson, yeah, I do appreciate that because that's kind of the what I'm looking for. I don't know on the city manager's behalf though, is that to try and get something prepared, right, to have an idea of what that number needs to be, and then still as a follow-up, even with the personnel actions that have been identified, there's still an additional gap there, and I think that again, for presentation purposes, for transparency to the public, even from a planning perspective, to have what that's going to be for the presentation. Of course, that can change between the preliminary and the final levy, but I will need some guidance on what I am going to prepare and present. So I appreciate that we to kind of move this process forward to have something identified. And one thing I want to say too is that I think this discussion is very difficult, and there's a lot of economic uncertainty, people impacted greatly. But you look outside and you drive around the town, it is small. But to the city manager's credit, the development that's going on here, that there's 3 street projects essentially that we'd be done every other year are going on right now. So I think that there is some uncertainty going on out there, but and I know with TIF districts in respect of the compromised future tax dollars that are needed to go back to pay back those things, but I think the council and staff has done an excellent job from my perspective of really moving forward with different projects and taking advantage of opportunities. So again, difficult conversations, but there has been some good that has occurred in the last year. So.
And I'll say for the record, I'm 100% agreeing with Councilmember Sonic on TIF districts. I wish we could just take a statewide vote and make it illegal. But unfortunately, to be competitive, it's something that we have to consider, because outside of the Sweet Living project, I don't know if any of these other projects would be going on if it weren't for TIF. It's just,
that's true.
Don't offer it, they go to Hugo and get it, or they go to,
It almost needs a national moratorium on it. It's not fair.
City manager.
I would just throw out a quick response on the Sweet Living. That's something that we're working on right now too. I hope that doesn't change. We've got a request for conduit financing for that, though there was not any TIF related to that. They're looking at doing conduit financing to sell bonds to potentially put 5 of those locations into a nonprofit 501c3. We just were notified of that and following up with information with that, and it's something that we will fight aggressively if that's the case, because if that happens, that potentially will take them off the tax roll, and it could also trigger the repayment of grant funding that we received through deed to clean up that site.
Another moving part.
Correct.
Right.
But what I'm hearing with everybody tonight, kind of a consensus is with this 0%. And again, it's extremely difficult conversation. I agree with that, but I also don't want to sell us short for the future as we're coming forward, and just stop the forward movement we've had with our infrastructure and buildings, and come to a balance that we can maintain and live within and try to continue to move forward with.
All right, any other questions for Jason or Scott?
If there is anytime, feel free to call anytime, email anytime, phone anytime to discuss anything you have.
Jan, what do you got?
I just want to say thank you. This has been an extremely difficult season for us and the budget. And you spoiled us last year, Jason. You did such an amazing job, and it's and you're doing a great job with what you got right now. And God bless you. Thank you. But it's wow. It can get overwhelming looking at all of this, and so. Thank you both to you and to Scott for the time that you've taken. I know with me when I come in and go, oh my God, and I thank you for that, because I wouldn't be understanding as much as I do if you hadn't. And thank you.
And I
Thank you,
agree.
Councilmember Walzak.
I agree. These are very, very, very difficult times.
Yeah.
We're going through something that we've never been through before, and so kudos to all of you. Anything else for Scott or Jason? If not, motion to adjourn. If Jenny, if you could take the roll. Or motion to adjourn.
So
Moved by Councilmember Sonic, second by Councilmember Peterson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Jenny, if you could take the roll.
Councilmember Thorson,
Aye.
Councilmember Peterson,
aye.
Councilmember Walzak,
Aye.
Councilmember Sonic,
Aye.
Mayor Furlong.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.